Question 13, we need to list the fractions from least to greatest. Okay, so you might know which is bigger or smaller, but just to make sure, and just in case you don't know, what we're going to do is give each fraction the same denominator. Okay, so I'm going to write these out a little bigger. 7/10 I have, 3/5 and 1/2. Okay, so if we find a common denominator for all of the fractions, then we can really compare them properly. Okay, so what's a common denominator for 2, 5 and 10? What's a common multiple of 2, 5 and 10? What number does 2, 5 and 10 all go into? And one way to find it, of course, is to go, well, if you list the multiples of 2, they would be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and so on, right? If you list the multiples of 5, there would be 5, 10, 15, 20, and so on, right? And the multiples of 10 would be 10, 20, 30, 40, and so on, right? What number is common to each list? What's the smallest number that's in each list, right? And that's the lowest common multiple. You might know it right away, but if you were stuck, this is how you would do it. So do you see that the number 10 goes into 10, 5 goes into 10, and 2 also goes into 10, right? So if I turn all of these fractions into tenths, then I can compare them properly, right? So the first one's already in tenths, it's just 7/10. How would you turn 3/5 into tenths? 5 times what would give you 10? 5 times 2, right? And if you multiply the bottom by 2, you also must multiply the top by 2. So the 3/5 transforms itself into 5 times 2 is 10 and 3 times 2 is 6. 6/10. The 3/5 transformed itself into 6/10. It's the same thing though. 6 times is like 3/5. It's the same thing. It just looks different. It has a different denominator. Now, what would you do to 2 to turn it into 10? How would you convert 1/2 into tenths? 2 times what gives 10? 2 times 5, and you must multiply the top by 5 as well, right? So 2 times 5 is 10, and 1 times 5 is 5. So the half gets transformed into 5/10. Half of a dollar is the same thing as 5 dimes, isn't it? 5 dimes is a half of a dollar. It's the same thing, it just looks different. But this time now we have converted all of the fractions into tenths, and so we can compare them to see which is smaller and larger. So list the fractions from least to greatest means list them from the smaller one to the larger one. What's the smallest fraction here? 5/10, right? What's the next biggest fraction? 6/10, right? And what's the next one? 7/10, right? And those correspond to the original fractions that we had of 1/2, 3/5, and 7/10, and that's the answer. We've listed them from least to greatest.